Hall and Monique Johnson. So as we get started, Jen,
I can read each of your.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll read each of your bios really fast. Miss Brittany, could you give us a wave?
Hi, everyone.
So Miss Brittany is a licensed professional counselor who works at 360 Youth Services as a residential therapist, and also with their transitional housing program, where she provides therapy to youth experiencing homelessness. She also works part-time at Gonski Counseling Services as a private practice near Palatine, and she's currently taking new clients. So if that's something that someone you know is looking for, you can touch base with Brittany afterwards. Brittany is passionate about destigmatizing mental health in the Black community, and even hosts her own podcast called All Things Mental Health and Black, through which she discusses such issues. So thank you, Miss Brittany.
Thanks for having me.
And next we have Miss Monique. You could give a wave. Monique Johnson is a licensed clinical professional counselor and a nationally certified counselor. She is also a certified child and adolescent trauma professional. Monique currently works at 360 Youth Services, providing mental health services at Crone in our district and also at Still Middle School. In addition to her role as at the middle schools, she provides counseling services at the office in Naperville and in surrounding communities. So thank you, Miss Monique. And then we have Miss Jill, and Jill is a licensed social worker. She can give us a wave. And she currently is providing mental health counseling with 360 Youth Services at the Naperville office and providing therapy to students at both Waubonsie and Mattia Valley High Schools. So thank you, ladies, for spending your time with us this evening.
Yeah, thank you for introducing us. So I will just jump right in because we do want to be able to provide you all with the information that you all really wanted to hear. And then we know that we also might get questions or comments. So we're just going to jump in. So I'm going to share my screen with you all as we begin. Implicit bias amongst medical workers. We're seeing that not all medical workers, and I have a friend who works in one of the hospitals in Chicago, and he noted that depending on the hospital system, there's bias. There are people who don't believe the pain of Black people. So something might happen, or they're like, I can't breathe, or there's something wrong with me. There won't be follow-up to check, and unfortunately, that ends up in a death. Outside of implicit bias, there's also access. Well, actually, going back to the implicit bias of medical work, that impacts testing. If people aren't believing your symptoms, they're not going to test you. So that's also a problem. So are we looking at access to information or misinformation? I remember having a student say that that Black people couldn't get the coronavirus. And I've seen that across the board, across the country. Some people were believing that. Like, does our community have access to the actual information and facts about the virus? Other things we have to look at are incarceration rates. So unfortunately, Black people, we represent probably 15 to 20% of the population, and talking about Illinois, but there's over 50% of us in the judicial system. So, and jails are a hotbed for the coronavirus. You can't social distance in a jail. And just also including that with all this information, we have to understand that the flaw isn't the color of our skin. The flaw is how the system treats us because of the color of our skin. And lastly, just a part of social determinants, I want to kind of acknowledge what's happening around in our society beyond people getting sick. Especially there was a case in New York City where this officer, Francisco Garcia, is just an example of Black communities are being over-policed with social distancing compared to white communities. I know we've also all seen these protesters. I included one picture just from Michigan that we see people protesting and feeling as if their rights are being inhibited from them, and with assault rifles and in police faces. And I feel like we've seen examples where if perpetrators are Black, that would not be the case. They would be dead. So we have to look at that, how that impacts our mental health. And then obviously, I think with the case of the young man, Ahmaud Arbery, it didn't happen during the coronavirus, happened probably late February. But just thinking how hearing about that along with what's going on with the virus, that can be very detrimental to our mental health. Also, I'm not able to see the chat that easily from this presentation. So Brittany and Monique, if you all see questions, please, can you let me know. So yeah, I just want everyone to be aware of all these contributing factors.
So, hey everyone, I'm Monique. There's so much that is going on right now, I think, just for everyone, right? We have this global pandemic going on. We have how we as an ethnicity are definitely being impacted hugely by this. And then our world has changed. We are ordered to stay in the house. And for those that can stay in the house, we have to work at home. We have to be with our family at home. We have to take care of ourselves at home. And our typical routines of things that we do to take care of ourselves, we might not have access to that. And so I wanted to kind of talk about, like, how do we manage with all of these different things that are going on that we're learning about, that we know about, and so how do we be able to manage ourselves and manage our families? And so this slide that we have up is kind of like, how do you take care of yourself before you are able to take care of your family members, take care of your children, take care of your significant others and friends and relationships? You can't fill from empty cups. So how do you fill up your cup and figure out what energizes you and keep you going so that you can be able to help other people? Did you give me access to this, Jill?
Yes.
There we go. Okay. So on the next slide, I have just a list of different things that you guys can take notes from this, or just kind of pick out things that you may think resonate with you that you can kind of do. But I recently posted something on our social media page, just a little blog about like how we sometimes, even with just mental health outside of COVID-19, we naturally have things that we are struggling with when it comes to mental health. So let's add a global pandemic on top of that. It gets even more stressful. And so how do you take care of yourself during that time? And how do you take care of yourself knowing that things that you usually do are not available? And so I wanted to go through this list of the different things that are on there. I don't know how the slides just changed. There you go. So I want to go through this list of different things that you can do. So stick to a routine. You know, our routines are completely changed since we have done this stay-at-home order. So how do you, still get up and get dressed and do a typical routine, get breakfast, work, do an exercise routine or do something, have dinner at night, finding structure within your day so that you still feel like you are doing things each and every day that helps with your mental health. And then exercise could be yoga, it can be high-intensity training, whatever that looks like, how to get active. And that also releases dopamine and endorphins in the brain, so it naturally makes you feel better, which is why when people who run, they get runner's high, because they're in this natural state of feeling good. So it's really good for your mental health and the brain. The weather's breaking, so get outside. We are sheltered in place, right? So sometimes we may be in the house all day, every day. Get outside, get fresh air, get some sunlight. It also helps with your mood and your mental health as well. Go for a walk, or if you're a runner, go for a run, go for a jog in a way that you feel safe, that you can still social distance and feel safe while you're outside. Some people like to listen to music, whether it's gospel music, whether it's your R&B, whether it's your jazz, whether it's country music, whatever it is for you, put on some music to be able to meditate and stay in during this time. Maybe learn a new skill, knitting, or learning how to put things together, painting, art, drawing, whatever that may be. Learn a new skill, cook a new meal, learn how to cook. That can be a new skill. So while we have all this extra time, find things that fuel you during this time. And then one thing is really, really very good I've been sharing with people is that I think it's really important to limit your intake of news and social media. There's so much on the news that corona, you know, on Facebook and different like social media sites, all you see is coronavirus. And so take a break from social media, take a break from the news so that you can be able to not be so and then so some other options that you can do a virtual game night. I recently did a virtual game night with some of my friends, and it was so much fun after a long day of work. So get together with family members or, you know, friends that are not in your home and do a virtual game night. Or if you are a faith-based person, watch an online service. There are a lot of churches that are doing virtual online services for you to be able to still get that and feed that into you. Or call friends and family. We're not able to see them. We're not able to be around them. And so how do you FaceTime or Zoom them to still feel that connection with other people outside of your home? And then practice mindfulness. How do you be in touch with your body? How do you realize what's going on with your body? What are you feeling? Are you feeling anxious? Those bodily symptoms and things like that. That's important to take care of your body. If we get to it, we're going to do a meditation later in our presentation that can kind of show you what you're feeling and experiencing in your body, to take some deep breaths and just be present. Because I know we have so many questions about what's next, what's after May 30th, what's next month, what's in the fall. How to be present in the moment and to stay grounded so that your anxiety doesn't shoot very high. And then all in all, if you still are struggling and not able to take care of yourself in this moment, how do you be able to seek resources like therapy? There are a lot of therapists that are doing online therapy services, recently included, and we're able to provide virtual counseling. So seek therapy. Okay. I am technology. Okay, and then so while you're taking care of yourself, you know, you're pouring into yourself, and then now that you're, you know, in a good space, we have all this time with our family. How do we connect with our family? And since you are at home with your loved ones, I think it's super important to spend this precious time to connect with them. Schedule family activities, not something that you're going around and cleaning all day, because that's not something fun. But get together and like play games together, play Monopoly, or watch a movie together. Binge watch a Netflix show. Find something that you guys can sit together and bond and do together during this time. Cook together. Make crafts. I know kids, sometimes teens and high schoolers, they'll probably watch and do some cooking with you, but maybe some of them like to do art, like paint or draw or something like that. Like do a craft with them, and that way they'll be engaged and want to do it and not feel like it's a chore or something that they don't want to do. And then something I've noticed with some of my clients is that they're like, oh my God, I'm spending so much time with my family or my siblings. I just want some space to feel. I think that's okay, that if they're like, okay, can I just get this evening to be retreat, to recharge and re-energize and have some alone time. Some of us are introverts and they need that time alone just to be able to re-engage in a better way later on. So if they are requesting that, it's okay to respect that and give them some time.
Okay. Moving it forward. Nope. Okay. So basically, like Monique, you know, talked about how do you all take care of yourself, and I'm gonna go a little bit more into things to consider with your family and with your children. So not only are we seeing that the like physical illnesses of having coronavirus are going up, but mental health issues are on the rise as well, especially for our frontline workers who are in the process. And so we are, as mental health professionals, we're expecting to have mental health crisis after this. We're just trying to be prepared for that. So it's really beneficial for you all to take advantage of this now to avoid that when all of this kind of slows down. So I think when you're engaging with your children, please acknowledge your own emotions. Like, you all are parents, and I know sometimes it's hard you don't want to put your emotions on your children, so you have to take the time to acknowledge them yourself. Like, it's okay for you to be scared, and it's okay to be discouraged. You're human, and I think that when you acknowledge that, it prevents you from taking it out on your family later on. And as you acknowledge your own, you kind of probably give your kids permission for them to acknowledge their own feelings. We want to encourage you all to talk to them, intentionally talking to them. As far as like discussing, like, how are you taking this? Like, I know I've had clients say, oh, it's fine. And it's fine for me if like I'm feeling something, I just don't want to talk about it. And that's fine. Like, as I'm using, like, that's okay to not want to discuss or not know how to discuss what's going on. But please provide that space for them and know they don't have to have it all together. I think as we've also noticed that with us having to work from home or do school from home, for some reason, I don't know why, but limits apart as what we're able to do has gone up, just because I think people think we're home. And that's like not the case. I don't think people are taking into account the mental and emotional effects of this. So understand that your kids probably, when they say I have a lot of work, they probably do. Was there I see a chat.
How can we support our seniors and college graduates during this time?
Gotcha. So I will put a hold on that question. Well, actually, I can answer now because it was in the next slide. But basically, we were discussing, acknowledge that having a prom, a graduation, going to college, like those are all very important milestones. I remember being 17, like, I'm gonna get out of my house, finally, I can be free. And some kids can't do that anymore, or they don't know what the fall looks like. They can't dance or wear those dresses that cost so much money and you can't return them. Like, it's sad. So I think as far as supporting them, I've seen many different people having celebrations for their children. Like, we can't go and have a physical graduation, then we're going to celebrate you here. Like, we're going to give you a cake or a card or something. And some kids might not like that, and like that's up to them. But I think when you put the effort into, like, I'm acknowledging that this was supposed to be a different time for you, but we're going to celebrate in any way we can. And like, we can even continue to celebrate later when things get better. But I think this is one of those things that I don't think there's a feel good, it's going to make them 100% better. They're going to be sad about that, and that's okay. All right, so back to where we left off. So this is also a very new reality for everyone, and it kind of goes off of that question. Not only are seniors and college graduates not being able to celebrate, but I'm sure all of us probably had plans. Like, I know I had plans, especially for the summer. It might be very simple, just a birthday, but all these things that we took for granted, it's a loss. So, and not only on top of losing what you plan to do, but people are losing family members left and right. So I think this is a time to acknowledge that it's okay to grieve. Please let your children grieve and allow yourself to grieve. This is a grieving process. And also understanding that people are feeling disconnected. Like, I know some clients whose parents are letting them see friends and they try to social distance, but others can't. Or their friends might not have access to a computer or a phone where they can FaceTime. So they're missing their friends, and I'm sure we are missing our own friends as well. So that's something to take into consideration. Something from the chat. Oh, okay. You are so welcome, Sandra. Okay. So now continuing back to more how to support your children. I know this can be a little bit controversial. I think especially just being growing up in my home, education was number one. I was a first generation student. That's what you did. Like, what's a B? You must have got a B because like some accident, but C, D, F, forget about it. Like, it was very, and I think that's prevalent amongst the community, is to have students achieve and do well. Also, this isn't school as usual. I don't know how many people have to learn physics and chemistry, just naming some like really hard subjects, at least for me, while at home and in your bed, and you don't know if you'll ever see your friends again. Like, this is very hard. So I'm not saying to, if they're not doing their work, then just like, whatever, like, I don't care, but be more compassionate towards that. Like, I see that, you're struggling, and I hear, but you can do it, giving encouragement. but not punishment if they're not able to engage. I think at least in 204 in this district, I've heard that they can't get lower than what they have. So I'm saying if your child has an A or B and they're just like mentally not in it, do you think you can allow the space for them to just be? There's a question in the chat. This is from Tyler Hunt. My team has considered educational expectations for our third graders and have decided to make, yeah, that's a great idea. Like they need something to be excited about and happy about. Like they just got their friends and teachers ripped from them. So it's hard to focus in this time when you don't know what grades or the next year looks like. So just take into consideration that with your children. As Monique stated earlier, seclusion is normal. Some people need to process alone. I wouldn't force someone to just leave if they're fine. That's why I said within reason, because you don't want too much seclusion and too much isolation that could lead to potential worse mental health outcomes for them. Like Monique said, also encourage a routine with them. I think with little kids it might be a little easier, but teenagers, I work primarily with teenagers and they're doing their own thing. I think they're finding that they're forgetting the days. They stay up all night and they sleep during the day. So if we can help them create a routine where they can get some sun and not just like be night owls, you know? But in that routine, include rest, include distractions, healthiness, because honestly, as adults, we ideally work 8 hours a day and kids are only in school for that long. And at home, I think we can, that work to home life ratio is not as apparent. There's a question.
The question is, can you speak more about the seclusion and when should you become concerned about too much seclusion? Do you want to do that?
I can too.
Yeah, Brittany or Monique, please feel free to jump in.
Brittany.
Okay. What I was going to say is it definitely depends on the age, I would say. So if you have like a 15, 16, 17-year-old, it's very normal for them to want to be in their room all the time, versus if you have like a little one, that would be more concerning. They're going to want to be up under you way more typically. And so definitely considering the age of the child. And then also what, how do I put this, kind of what does that provide for them? And so if you know your child is usually like very outgoing, social butterfly, was always here, there, everywhere with this person, that person, and now because of shelter in place, they're in their room, they don't want to come out, the curtains are drawn and things like that, that's an area to be concerned. Whereas if you know you have like a more introverted bookworm, wasn't really out that much to begin with, that might be their comfort or their safe place or their happy place. So if it's pretty typical behavior for them, then that's not an area to be concerned. But of course, you know your children. So if you know that they're mainly social, but then they're like isolating and staying in their room and seem kind of distant, that's when I would kind of lean in more and have them talk about what's going on. How are they feeling about feeling isolated, not being able to see their friends, encouraging them to do more virtual things, FaceTiming, to get that social connection is what I would say. Do you guys have things to add to that?
No, I think you hit it on the nail.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is these daily activities that we're all doing or we're supposed to be doing, like when's the last time they showered? When did they last eat? Like, I think making sure that they're doing that. Because I think what's common, especially I think with depression, is some of those things as far as showering, eating, like taking care of yourself, it kind of falls to the wayside. I've had some clients that haven't showered in a week. I'm like, no, like you need to shower. Like just because you're not leaving doesn't mean that you shouldn't be taking care of your body. So look out for those too. Okay. So other ways to support your child, as we said earlier, celebrate their accomplishments, and not just for like seniors or like graduates. Like think of, you did really good. And if you have a youngin, like, your 5th grade year was great. Like, good job, you finished it. Because I think I remember, even if I wasn't a senior or in a place where I was moving on to the next stage of an education, like high school or college, there's kind of like a celebration. Like, you made it. It's the end of the year, and kids don't have that informal celebration anymore with their friends, as far as like, I just left my last class, I'm free. They don't have that. So I think putting something in there for them would be beneficial. And I put being present versus being a fixer. And this is more talking to your children about their emotions. We don't have to fix everything or make them feel great and like butterflies and rainbows. It's more just, I'm here for you. If you want to talk, I can even encourage you to say, I don't even have to say anything to you. I just want to be here with you and support you. I think that takes a lot of pressure off of your child to just be able to speak and not feel like, because they might not even know the answer of what you can do to help them. So when you release that pressure for them to feel like, I have to say it in a way you can fix it, it just makes it easier to speak. And then also, like Monique said, just promote social interaction, whether it's with family or friends. I think, if kids are getting in trouble, and I think our natural instinct is to take phones away, I would depends on what your kids do, but I would consider that the phone is actually a connection to a lot of coping mechanisms like music, meditation apps, friends. Like, we don't want to isolate them and have them go like stir crazy without any connection to the outside world.
All right, so I'm Brittany, everyone. So with all of that said, now I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about navigating family conflict. So as we know, depending on your household and how things are going, we're all kind of on top of each other. And so whereas typically we have our routines, we get ourselves ready, we get the kids off to school, things like that. We get out of the house to work typically, then we come back in as a family. We don't have that anymore. And so school and work and family time and whatever else have you, church, everything is in the home. And so with that said, especially during a whole global pandemic, there's going to be a lot of different reactions and emotions and things like that. And I know what I'm finding within my own family is we're all reacting to this in very different ways. And so, whereas typically somebody might be going through something here and you might this week or whatever, we're all experiencing this at the same time. So now we're seeing how people react to this level of stress, and it can be very different and it might not mix well. And so looking at this slide and starting over, I don't know if I have control, Jill, but starting in the category where it says triggers. And so typically these are the things that will be the cause of some sort of conflict with your family. So it can be differing opinions, beliefs, personalities, whereas before you might not have sat down and talked about all these things and politics and social justice or sexuality oriented, like any like hot button topic. Now you have more time, a lot more time. And so it's possible that you're engaging and learning more about your family or your kids that you didn't before, learning about different viewpoints or understandings and things like that you otherwise might not have had those type of conversations. Looking at the next bullet point, change in family structure. And so as we know, many families are blended families. There can be a household with like a single mother or divorce happening, separation, someone who passed away. There's people who's dealing with grief, not only from the virus, but in other ways also. And all of that impacts the family structure under normal circumstances, right? Let alone when you add being in the house together every day. And so keeping in mind how that can differently impact your family right now. Also financial issues. And so speaking to what Jill was talking about when it comes to the type of jobs or careers we might have in the community, being an essential worker or not, being laid off and trying to figure out what that looks like to be able to provide, especially knowing like in some ways our expenses have lowered, but in other ways with housing, utilities, and things like that, it's going up because we're staying at home. And that financial issues can always impact family conflict. Next, mental health concerns, so depressive or anxious symptoms. before all of this, someone is dealing with certain mental health concerns, it's very possible that that can flare up during this time. And so someone who's been struggling with depression and who's been working very hard to get up, get dressed, brush their teeth, go outside, not stay in, having to be forced to stay in and be stressed out and not sure like what's to come of the future and things like that, that can trigger their depression, absolutely. And so being mindful of that, as well as anxious symptoms. And so it's possible that many of us who may not have struggled with anxiety, we are now, given what's going on. And so there's so much uncertainty. There's things in the past that, or like events and things from the spring or earlier this year that was missed. We don't know when things will open up. Will it get pushed back? What does going off to school look like for my kids and things like that? And so while there's some of us who do struggle with anxiety on a regular basis, we're finding that we're all to a certain extent starting to feel anxious, even just having to plan to social distance with a family member or going to the grocery store and cleaning down everything, right? Like that's an added level of stress that we just didn't have before. And so that can lead to feelings of like agitation and feeling more irritable than usual. And so it can take something simple to set that off. And now you're fighting with your family, which only adds to that level of stress that we could be feeling right now. The last trigger here is substance use. And so whether that was a problem before the stay-at-home order or if it is now, as we know, if substances are being used heavily to numb emotions or just deal with what's going on right now, that can definitely increase family conflict as well. So a few signs that tells you that your family's in conflict, and which I feel like we usually know, like we can feel it. It might be increased number of arguments. You're finding that you're bickering with your husband more. Your kids might be bickering more than they used to and things like that. Angry outbursts, avoidance or isolation, which we kind of talked about a little bit, as well as physical conflict. And so typically you'll find people who may be under this type of stress, they might have angry outbursts and they get really loud and upset and they might like break things or whatever. Then you have the people who withdraw. And so they don't say anything. They just kind of remove themselves from the situation and isolate and things like that. So those are signs to really look out for and be mindful of. That brings me to solutions. And so if you're finding that there is increased conflict among your family, I think a good idea is having a family meeting. You take it old school to family meeting. You sit everybody down. We say we're going to calm down, have one person talk at a time, and figure out what the true issue is. And so that's encouraging open communication and opportunity for everyone to be heard and validated. I want us to start doing a better job of validating others' experiences. And so recognizing like, okay, like when your brother hit you, that made you upset, you know, whether it was right or wrong or whatever have you. That's how you're experiencing that moment. And I acknowledge that. Also making sure to get to the root of the issue. And so there might be something on the surface that's happening, the arguments and things and the bickering that you can tell they're petty, but maybe that was the day that we found out this stay-at-home order is being extended. So everybody was like, oh, great, like now we have to deal with this. And you notice that tensions were higher at the dinner table that night. Acknowledging that of like, okay, I can tell we're all kind of hot right now, and maybe it's because of this. And having a real conversation about the root issue can help kind of dispel the amount of arguments that might happen. Because as we know, like having to stay home, we want to create more of a sanctuary and a safe place for our people. As Jill pointed out, it's not out there. And so it's up to us to create that within the home. So with that said, the last point is just try to stay calm and take breaks. I know that it can be hard, but you are the example for your children. And so as you learn to stay calm and kind of regulate yourself and express yourself, they learn from that, they take from that. And so if things are getting heavy and heated, taking a break, like, you know what, okay, clearly things are escalating. How about we come back in 10 minutes so we can really talk this out? it makes a huge, huge difference before things get out of control.
Okay. So we did have a meditation in mind. I think for the sake of time, we have 10 minutes left. I think we want to kind of, Monique, let me know, like, if there are people who really want to do the body scan. I think if you could stay on at the end if you want. But we want to just be able to get to more questions and the resources that we have for you all. And some of these resources I will be copying and pasting into the chat so that you all can get a hold of that information and get access to those links. As far as resources that 360 has uniquely, we do have a supporting mental health for parents during COVID. So yes, we did discuss that, but I think they're with our colleagues Michelle and Anna, they go a little bit more deeper into how you can navigate conflict and actually in more of that support for your children. Anna is placed at Nequa High School. I know for sure that might affect some of the Nequa parents here, and she's in some of the middle schools, and Michelle's in some of the middle schools as well. So if you all are interested in that, that's coming up on, I think, that next Tuesday and next Thursday. Those are the times. If you're interested, you can email Michelle. And then Brittany, did you want to kind of go through some of the resources?
Yeah, so I just put in a few resources that I found for our community at this time. So the first one is Successful Black Parenting Magazine. They have a website that offers a few pretty good articles about how to support your kids during this pandemic. And so I know we're kind of giving like an overview, but it seems that they go into detail when it comes to your relationship with your kids during this time. So that's a good option. Another one is the Loveland Foundation. And so they're offering financial assistance for women and girls seeking therapy. And so if that's something that you're interested in, we don't want finances to be a barrier, especially with the unknown that's going on right now. So that's an option.
Sorry, Brittany, I just wanted to get this information to them.
Oh, that's okay. How do I?
You
go to the next slide?
I gave you control, but I can go to the next one. There you go.
Okay. The next resource is Therapy for Black Girls. This provides mental health support for Black women and girls also. The mental health provider also has a podcast and things. And so if you look up Therapy for Black Girls, that's what will come up. Next, I don't know if you all have heard this, but Taraji P. Henson has her own foundation helping to provide more access to mental health resources for the Black community. And so right now she's doing a campaign to offer a set number of sessions. I can't remember what it is. I think maybe six.
I think it's four to five.
5?
Yeah.
Okay. 5 free sessions for people of color seeking therapy during this global pandemic. And so really this is a good time to seek therapy because things are so much more flexible. And so there's not concern for transportation right now since it's telehealth, and there is more providers who are offering like sliding scale fee or these campaigns where the therapy is free for a certain amount of sessions. So that's something to really take advantage of right now.
And also I want to add, there are some insurance companies that are waiving co-pays right now. And so if you have an insurance, you can check with your insurance and see if you have mental health benefits, and they could possibly be waiving the copay, and it could be free for you right now during COVID-19 shutdown.
So that brings me to Therapy for Black Men. So that is a website that offers a directory to lead Black men who are seeking therapy to therapists who can work with that population. Also, the next link is to a specific Black male therapist who works out of Chicago. And then the next resource is the NAACP, and so that provides information for our community. You're also able to report some of the things that we talked about when it comes to racial profiling and things like that, and how the Black community specifically is.
And I think as far as that discrimination piece, I found it, when you make the report, you can put it for different areas of discrimination. So are you being discriminated against for housing, or just like other, it's not coming to the top of my head, but there are other things besides social discrimination that you can include on that. And then they have people who will read it and try to advocate or share your story. And they also have other resources and press releases that
I think the pandemic has exacerbated feelings that were already present in the current political climate in terms of feelings of hopelessness, especially for our children. How can we motivate through feelings of hopelessness?
that's a great, I think for a second, I might exit out of the presentation just so we can all speak with each other.